Vítame vás na dnešnom kultúrnom zápase, v ktorom sa stretne vyzývateľ z Košíc Šándor Máraj s borcom z Prahy Francom Kafkom v boji o titul Európskeho mesta kultúry. Áno, zápas sa začína. Košice spolu s celým Slovenskom sú v napätí. Franc útočí a Šándor si pred jeho výrektom nešikovne krije tvár. Je zasiahnutý, ale tvrdo opláca Francovi, je to neuveriteľné, ale stalo sa nemožné. Máraj, slovenský reprezentant, víťazí KO. A v Francovej tvári môžeme vidieť, že boj o umenie skutočne boli. Ale každopádne titul mesta kultúry ostáva stále v Košiciach.
Well, I am Beatriz Garcia, the director of the Impacts of Aid research program on the effects of hosting the European Capital of Culture in Liverpool. We are at the Albert Dock. That is a very iconic site for the city of Liverpool, a place of great historical significance, but also one of the locations where the notion of transformation for the city through cultural activity took place since the mid-80s, and also has been renovated through the 2008 European Capital of Culture experience. Glasgow hosted the European Capital of Culture back in 1990 and was in fact the first city to make the case to the European Commission that this title could be utilized not only to celebrate cities that were already recognized as cultural centers, but also to help those places or those environments where culture was at the basis but not as visible as it could be, to actually make that case and move forward. Glasgow did so. It achieved it very successfully back in the 90s. And in fact, Liverpool, the city that hosted the title back in 2008, followed on Glasgow steps and also used the discourse around cultural regeneration as one of its core ambitions and its core foundations. Experience of Liverpool. This is another city within the UK with a very strong, powerful tradition of cultural activity, with amazing architecture, with a strong community of artists, but a city that lost as well its economic base. In this case, it was the trade and commerce through ships and the management of the port and the kind of great warehouses, of which we have some examples around us right now. A city that lost that economic base in the mid-20th century and progressively become more and more marginalized within the UK. As it was a city that didn't have a very strong industrial base because it had relied on commerce and exchange, what you had was an empty of opportunities for job development and also the halving of the population. I mean, a city that was close to 800,000, 900,000 inhabitants halved into 400,000 in quite a short period of time. That's a very dramatic impact. The city centre basically became a ghost town. There was practically no people living within it, and places like this, like the Albert Dock, became closed, were covered over with concrete during the 60s and the 70s. Now, in the 80s, at the same time as certain conversations were happening in Glasgow around, well, how do we rethink this city? How do we attract investment by rediscovering our economic base and relying on services rather than just industry? Liverpool was doing and having similar conversations, and one of the early thinking was to reopen these docks and utilize them as a platform to attract tourism by, on the one hand, well, bringing restaurants and bars and shops, but on the other, very importantly, attracting a very high reputed cultural centre or art centre, and that was the opening of Tate Liverpool. But it was not something that was at the heart of a strategy for the city for a while. So it was not until year 2000 or 2001 that the conversation restarted. This time thinking, well, perhaps what this city needs, what Liverpool needs, is the European Capital of Culture. The UK was going to have it again in 2008, and it is since 2000-2001 that you have real conversations happening again within local authorities, with the tourism bodies, with development agencies, and the cultural and creative communities in the city to actually attract this title. One of the decisions was to actually ensure that there was a very strong connection between that program of activity and the local population. That there was not a danger of utilizing the year only to attract tourists and develop high-profile extravaganzas that may be short-lived. So there was a lot of sensitivity towards protecting the interests of the local inhabitants and ensuring that the focus for the program had a real Liverpool flavor and was fair towards representing, well, the aspirations of the citizens here. It's important to understand that looking into Europe, the European capital of culture, as an opportunity was happening at the same time as plenty of other conversations about the wider regeneration of the city and the wider needs of the city to attract investment. So since 2000 and even before then, the city had secured Objective 1 status and attracting particular funding and support at the European level, which allowed a very dramatic transformation of the kind of physical infrastructures within the city. Very important, very much needed new buildings and new developments around physical space and roads within the city. There was also the decision to transform the area around the Albert Dock so that as a site for tourism, it was not just an isolated, beautiful spot surrounded by dereliction, which actually had been the case in the 90s, and that it reconnected better with the rest of the city. It was important to say, yes, we have fantastic cultural assets, we have a very original artistic community, but also it was important to say we have the investors that are coming to this city to transform physical spaces, to reconnect the waterfront with the rest of Liverpool. And we are going to have not only a fantastic program of cultural events, but also a fantastic range of facilities for people to enjoy those events. So new hotels we are going to have, the restaurants we are going to have, very nice public avenues where people can walk around. I mean, all of this needed to happen in parallel. So what is important is the combination of the different elements to have credibility as a center for arts and culture and creativity that is original and that is authentic, but also a place that has good services so that if you come and visit, you also have somewhere to stay that is nice and you can go and eat somewhere that is going to be interesting enough.